Hello, everybody, and welcome to the second episode of Joe and Connor's Power Hour. Today, we watched a film, which I think we both unanimously consider Zack Snyder's best, but still perhaps not very good.
I agree.
For various reasons. And the point of us watching his best film, perhaps, is so that we could shit on him.
Yes.
And because we can shit on Watchmen, which is the film we're talking about, if you can't see my beautiful Dr. Manhattan graphic. So we're going to partially talk about Zack Snyder. We're going to partially talk about Watchmen. And that's kind of the podcast for today.
Agreed.
Because I think we're both very opinionated on Zack Snyder's career.
Agreed.
And I think in a lot of ways, his career has been cut into three segments, and we're kind of in the third segment of Zack Snyder's career. There's the direct adaptions, which is where Zack Snyder created his fan base and came off as slightly competent, but those are almost one-for-one adaptions. Those are Dawn of the Dead, 300, and Watchmen. There's the DCEU phase, which was a fucking train wreck, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And then now you have his original IPs like Rebel Moon and Army of the Dead, which, Army of the Dead didn't pan out very well, but Rebel Moon is kind of TBD, his little Star Wars clone, which I think we should talk about because we're both Star Wars guys.
I agree.
But we'll get there. Let's start out with the first phase of his career, with a primary focus on Watchmen.
Yeah.
Joe, what are your thoughts on Watchmen?
So when I first watched Watchmen, I was a kid, and you gave me a rated R. It was my first rated R superhero movie. I was like, all right, this is pretty cool. I remember reading the comic, and I thought this is pretty cool. But now, after rewatching it as an adult, being almost 30 years old, I can honestly say that, well, this could be considered Zack Snyder's best movie. It's still not very good. It is a direct adaptation,
right,
but it's not a very good adaptation.
Right. I mean, there's some changes here and there with Watchmen. But I feel like a lot of the bad parts of Watchmen, when watching it, I'm like, why would they do that?
Yeah.
And the decisions often come down to the director. Like we were really roasting. So at the comedian's funeral, they play the song "The Sound of Silence," which is very famous for not only just being a huge hit song, but also playing at the end of The Graduate. And it's like, why touch that song?
Yeah.
And then you cut from kind of this solemn song about kind of just the existential nature of life. And it's supposed to be kind of tragic when you hear about the comedian, but the comedian isn't a good character. He kills pregnant Vietnamese women. This scene actually transitions right into a scene where he's raping the Silk Spectre, and it's a disaster. And like I said, the movie from a script perspective isn't bad, but that's because it takes from Watchmen so much. And then there's just these terrible direction choices.
Yep.
Yeah.
They're very terrible, and I didn't notice it as much, because they are different. But the more and more you look at the scenes, and even though he is the focus point of the movie, I feel like you're taking Rorschach, and Rorschach is just rated R Christian Bale Batman.
Right.
And that makes me really sad, because I thought when I was 9 or 10 and I watched Watchmen, I was like, this is so cool. This is one of the coolest characters ever. And he's still a cool character, but just not in this live-action adaptation. Because Rorschach is just Christian Bale with same level of darkness. Just this one murders and is a detective and maybe has a slightly cooler outfit. But it still is the whole voice thing, everything they do, they mimic each other. And it shows you that Christopher Nolan, Christopher Nolan is a far more brilliant director than Zack Snyder will ever be. You can see that they had their similarities in terms of they were sharing an office together. They were like, oh, this would be cool if we do this, and that's how we do this. And That's unfortunate because I think Rorschach is such a cool character. He deserves to not be compared to someone like Batman. He deserves to be his own character.
Well, it feels like Zack Snyder wants to be Christopher Nolan so bad.
Yeah.
But also he wants to be an auteur really bad. Like he always talks about like Akira Kurosawa as one of his big influences, and Rebel Moon, which is upcoming, is supposed to basically be Seven Samurai in space.
Yep.
And it's like, even like you look at like the Justice League Snyder Cut, which is kind of his magnum opus in a way, which I don't think it's very good.
Yeah.
But it is his magnum opus.
Mm-hmm.
And he tried to do it in like 4x3, very artsy. He wants to be respected. He wants to be smart, but a lot of his choices are dumb. It's like Michael Bay if he wanted to be smart.
Yeah, exactly. And like for me, let alone like, because obviously there's the stuff that was in the Whedon cut that Zack Snyder still borrowed from, but then there's like, if we're talking just the Snyder cut in general, I still cannot. I understand that he had a plan, he had a vision. I cannot believe from someone who is a comic book reader that he has a movie where he has Deathstroke in the opportunity to use as an antagonist, and he would rather tell a rehashed story of a better version of Steppenwolf when Steppenwolf was already proven to not be a good villain. Changing the actor, writing, doing the CGI, changing it doesn't change that the idea of the character. This is now basically compared to the new Loki for DC. It's not anything different. It's not anything new.
Right.
Deathstroke would give us that edge. It would make it interesting because how does Deathstroke defeat Superman? How does Deathstroke defeat the Flash? How does Deathstroke? Maybe Deathstroke has an army of parademons. Maybe Deathstroke strikes a deal with Darkseid. Maybe Darkseid. And Zack Snyder has a really good actor for Darkseid. And he has Darkseid. And like, why would you not? If this is your one shot to do Justice League, have your villain be Darkseid.
Do something.
Just
right.
fucking like, if you have Darkseid, use Darkseid. Like. You mean, oh, this guy's trying to earn Darkseid's trust back, and we're supposed to, like, and so he doesn't get banished. Like, I don't give a shit about that. I want Darkseid. You have the coolest looking Darkseid ever, and you're just, like, gonna let him sit there in the portal and tease him? Oh, maybe he'll fight Superman, maybe he won't. Like, what?
Well, I can relate it a lot to, like, J.J. Abrams.
Yeah.
Where J.J. Abrams and Justice League Snyder Cut feels like this. And a lot of J.J. Abrams movies feel like this, is especially at the start of the series. Like, you look at The Force Awakens, for example. Mm-hmm. Promise as much as you can to the fans, but unfortunately, you have no idea how you're going to deliver.
Yep.
So, the Snyder Cut felt like a 4 hours of, I promise that this is going to happen. I promise this is going to happen. And then it goes nowhere. Is that necessarily Zack's fault? No. But he should have kind of known that this was his one shot. You can say it's Zack's original vision, but he also had the benefit of hindsight with the theatrical Justice League. So he knew what he could cut, he knew what he could add. He had a lot of privilege, and what he should have done is tried to make this like one big last hurrah. Maybe, Warner Brothers gave him a bunch of money. Why not have the Justice League fight Darkseid and just make this big-ass movie?
He has this huge budget. And Batman was, like, buffed in that movie where, like, he had, used the parademon tech to make his own, like, gadgets that could confront, like, energy. So why would you not have him use those weapons against, like, if he's stealing parademon tech, let him use it to confront Darkseid, like in the old Batman, like, in Justice League Dark Apocalypse. Like, have that kind of good storytelling, because that's what you want to see. Like, that's the thing I don't understand. All the cards are laid on the table, and he still does nothing with the cards he has. And he's built on this whole, well, we'll make the Nightmare Vision the future of this universe. And, like, to me,
which is a stupid idea.
It is. It is stupid, because as cool as DC and Mad Max should definitely work, and it should be cool, on paper, yeah, it sounds awesome. But the execution
Zack
of it
never
isn't cool.
delivered DC. He delivered weird visions that poorly written visions.
And it never comes true. You never see, like, there's promises once again, but you never see, like, Batman and Deathstroke team up and go fight evil Superman.
Well, my other problem with Zack is that it's a flaccid boner, dude.
Yep.
You got Batman vs Superman, promises the world.
Yep.
Justice League promises the world even more, but no execution.
Yep.
And I feel bad for people who actually like Justice League Snyder Cut and Batman vs Superman. I didn't like those very much. They're messy stories. Justice League is far better than BVS, but still not very good.
Yep.
I saw BVS in theaters, and I was like, this is one of the most disappointed, like, almost the most disappointed I've ever been for a movie.
I agree.
I didn't have the channel at the time. That was kind of between, because I started this channel before BVS came out. I took a brief hiatus while BVS came out, and what ultimately drew me back to this channel is how fucking terrible I find Rogue One to be, which I think we might be on differing opinions on that.
I don't love Rogue One as most people do. Like, when it comes to Rogue One, I have mixed feelings. There's two things that Rogue One are interesting to me for, and then there's a couple things that are just kind of like, I like Rogue One, and it is probably, like, for the Disney era of Star Wars, a lot of people would look at it as something that they like a lot, but I have a lot of, like...
Right.
I don't love it as much as other people love it. Like, a lot of our friends have said, like, super high opinions, and people have, like, have got even more elevated with Andor, but I didn't have that experience. I liked the movie. The movie's not as mind-blowingly great as people give it credit for. Like, it's got some cool ideas, and then there's some not great ideas. I think one of the worst ideas, in my humble opinion, and maybe this is just how, what's his face that did it? Was it Garrett Edwards that did it?
Gareth Edwards,
yeah. One of the things I never understood that he did not do is, it's cool that you have Donnie Yen there, and he's gonna be like a monk in the ways of the Force, but a dude with a stick in the Star Wars universe when Vader's around slicing people up with a lightsaber, if you're gonna show that there's believers in the Force, you don't have to make Donnie Yen a Jedi, but give Donnie Yen a lightsaber and let him fight Vader.
No.
Because to me, here's my thing. Okay, so that they want it to end with Vader slicing up the rebels.
You want to hear something controversial?
Yeah, go ahead.
Donnie Yen would make such a dope Jedi.
Yep.
And Star Wars has not been shy since Order 66. Yep. I'm starting to get convinced more Jedi survived Order 66 than fucking died with the amount we're seeing.
And they're only going to continue that with the Ahsoka show because they confirmed Balon and Shin were old Jedi from the old era. Like, I think there's going to be a flashback. And what I'm saying is,
go ahead. Why in the fuck was Donnie Yen not a Jedi?
I agree.
How did you not give this dude a Darth Maul double-bladed lightsaber to cut some fuckers up? Kill him by the end like he dies.
Yeah.
But give this man a double-bladed lightsaber to do some dope Chinese-style martial arts. Yeah. I don't even care. Make the movie fucking stupid. Because they tried to be pretentious with Rogue One, and you know what it was? It was fucking boring.
Well, yeah, because look at, like... So imagine, like, people talk about how great the hallway fight scene or the...
That's the only part of the movie I was like, whoa, first time.
But imagine how amazing it would be if, like, so they're on Scarif, but imagine he gets back to protect the plans... And the scene is Vader kills all of the rebels. It's easy work for him, no problem, right? Then the stormtroopers are there with Vader, and so while Vader's cutting through the rebels, Donnie Yen is just like old boy style chalking it up against the stormtroopers.
I don't know how the fuck you'd make that work with the story, but I'd be with it.
And then you have him just destroying them, and then Vader, and then he goes to the two of them, him and Vader, and we see a fight between this so-called, like, martial arts level power.
Just make Donnie Yen the main character and make a martial arts Star Wars movie. I want to see it.
Well, that's kind of something
why would they make a fucking Andor show?
Yeah.
When you could make a prequel where Donnie Yen is cutting people up. Or even if you're not going to make him a Jedi, with that fucking bow staff. Like, imagine The Warrior.
Yeah.
Or like a fucking Jackie Chan movie. Or a Donnie Yen movie. But Donnie Yen, instead of beating up random dudes, he's beating up stormtroopers, he's beating up Inquisitors. I don't give a shit anymore about Star Wars. Make something entertaining, dude. Star Wars has been so boring.
Yeah, I agree. To me, those
Mandalorian Season 3 was a bore.
Yeah, to me, the two things that Andor
sucked.
Yeah, to me, the two things I really liked about that movie, despite I don't think that movie's as strong as people say it is Donnie Yen being in it. I think that when he's there, I think the scenes of him beating up the stormtroopers with the stick are awesome.
Right.
And then the Vader thing. Those are the only really redeeming qualities to that movie.
Right.
From
what type of fucking shit is the stormtrooper armor made out of that a fucking bow staff is hitting them? I don't know, but
I
it's
gave
cool
up.
I agree.
I gave up on that whole nonsense. Like that's the thing.
And then I cringe so hard when you see like C-3PO and stuff.
Yeah.
My favorite Star Wars Disney project so far, there's my top 3 is Mandalorian season 1, followed by followed by Solo, followed by Mandalorian season 2. I didn't like. I enjoy Obi-Wan.
Yeah.
I also fundamentally hate Obi-Wan.
I agree.
I don't understand why. It's just like the idea of seeing Obi-Wan beat the shit out of Darth Vader and then be like, I won't kill you because it wouldn't make sense with the plot, so goodbye.
Yeah.
Like, that's what pissed me off.
Yeah.
I like Obi-Wan up to the point where he beats Darth Vader because I call it getting Darth Vadered. And I don't know if you watched my Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumanium review, but Kang got Darth Vadered. Yep. You can't beat up a super powerful supervillain a million times.
Yeah.
Because then he looks like a fucking bitch.
I agree.
How did Obi-Wan not kill his fucking ass in New Hope?
Yeah. Well, so hold on.
Was Obi-Wan even going to kill his ass?
Yeah, that's what I don't understand either, because to me, the thing that makes no sense on this situation is the fact that, like, with Obi-Wan, you have, like, to me, the thing with the Obi-Wan show is, I think, personally, they shouldn't have had them fight again after, until A New Hope. They should have had the one scene where Vader just whooped his ass, and then Vader's off doing other things. Like, you could still have Vader in the show, but have Vader focus on killing Reva and doing the other stuff, but then just focus on that first showdown where Obi-Wan was broken by Vader. Because that was the perfect side of revenge. We got that proper revenge before A New Hope. And then, you know what you do instead for the finale, which I know people have argued that this would probably retcon Rebels and whatever, and I'm glad you mentioned Solo. Dude, you throw in one more scene with Maul right there. You bring the finale where Maul shows up. Obi-Wan doesn't kill Maul, but so the Obi-Wan show is all about, we want Obi-Wan to be broken. We don't want to see Obi-Wan liberated and be happy, because when we meet him in A New Hope, he's not happy with where he's at. So you end the finale with him being even more broken. So he loses that duel. So Maul kicks his ass. Doesn't kill him, but kicks the shit out of him. So then in the same season, you have both Vader kicked his ass first, burned him to a crisp, like he did to Anakin. Then Maul's doing kicks and whatever you want and beats the shit out of him. And then just, that would be great.
Well, if they do a season 2,
I would love Maul versus
that
him.
Was one Dave Filoni fuck up, is killing off Maul once and for all, because it was kind of a waste, because it kind of ruins a lot of the suspense that you see in Solo.
But what I like about Dave Filoni,
but I mean, what did Filoni know? I mean, Filoni didn't know the scale Star Wars was going to be in a couple years.
Plus, the other thing that's cool about Dave Filoni is he'll do something, and then as much as people might look at this, he'll do something, but as a Star Wars fan, he'll think of something as like a retcon that other people will look at and like, oh, it's a retcon. Like he'll say he's endorsing a book, but then he'll be like, well, actually, let's change this. So creatively, he'll look at things, because he's got the side of him as a Star Wars fan, and he's got the side of him as a writer and director and what he wants to see. And so to please the fans, he'll do certain things and go, oh, actually, let's do this. So people might not say this would ever happen, but as a big Star Wars fan and a believer in Dave Filoni, I would not be surprised if there's going to be some project that comes up in the timeline where they do something, maybe not that completely retcons it, but there's enough time gap where they go, oh, Maul ran into these characters before this encounter happened.
Right.
So I think if they do Obi-Wan season 2, but I still think, and so I saw this question pop up on Twitter the other day, and we might have to do this for a Star Wars podcast one day, but the question came up about which Star Wars character deserves their own Disney Plus show or movie, and it's without a doubt Maul. Maul has to. Solo 2 should have just been like, yeah, you could have Han Solo doing things, you could have Han Solo be. I would be okay with Solo 2 just being, make it more of a Maul movie. It's Maul training Kira, and it's Maul, because that's what people want. People want more Darth Maul. Like Clone Wars, we got chunks of Maul, but the stories about Ahsoka and about Anakin and all these other characters, Maul needs the spotlight. They've canceled Darth Maul video games. Maul appears in Battlefront 2, one of the baddest characters around.
Did you know there was a cut scene from Solo 2 that was going to happen where Kira gets the pipe laid by Darth Maul?
I did not. That
just
sounds
kidding.
awesome.
I'm
No,
just
that'd be
kidding.
great. No,
Anyways,
yeah,
speaking of laying the pipe,
yeah,
back to
Zack Snyder.
Zack Snyder.
Yeah, so we got off track. We both
Watchmen.
love Star Wars so much, so
we're big Star Wars fans. Star Wars podcast is coming.
Yeah, we're gonna be. Just
I
doing a
have
little
so
promotion.
many ideas for this podcast.
I agree. We're gonna do so many cool.
We're
things.
gonna watch the Rankin Bass movies for Christmas.
That'll be fun.
That's our goal. If we can get one episode up to 1,000 views by Christmas, we'll do an episode on the Rankin Bass movies.
That's a good goal to have.
I'll force us. We'll hang out one day, Saturday or something. We're both off.
Yep.
We'll watch like 20 Rankin Bass movies, get mind melted by it.
Yep.
And then we'll review the Rankin Bass movies.
I think that's a great idea. So yeah.
Why? I don't know. That's my promise.
Just because we will.
That's my Joe and Connor's Power Hour promise.
I think it's a good promise to have. I mean, because it just takes us back to, when we were kids and Christmas, and that's how it's supposed to feel.
Halloween, we're going to talk about horror movies.
Yeah.
I like the idea of our podcast.
I like that it can be anything.
I like the idea we can talk about anything, This isn't nothing against your podcast.
No,
but there's Dawn of DC, which is so much like a DC podcast.
Yep. I just want
to talk about, we could have a podcast where we're just talking about us, man.
Yeah, I've always wanted a podcast.
Shooting the shit.
Yeah, I've always wanted a podcast that was literally just everything. I feel like everything is good, and that's kind of like, and what's cool is we start talking about DC in episode 1, but here now we watch Watchmen. We're talking about Watchmen, movie that came out in 2009. Now we're dissecting Zack Snyder, and I'm glad that we are, because now that we're dissecting Zack Snyder, because you have Snyder fans, you have all these other things, and I still don't understand what Snyder fans see in Zack Snyder. Because I'll be real with you guys, and you guys can do whatever you want with this information, but I will never. I have enjoyed aspects of Snyder's vision, and there's certain Snyder movies I like, but I'll be honest with you guys. I like Snyder's movies when it's not connected to comic book properties. So, for instance, I think, it's not amazing. I thought his, what was it? You said there's Dawn of the Dead?
Dawn of the Dead, yeah.
Yeah, I thought his Dawn of the Dead was solid because you're looking at Zack Snyder doing a heist movie. There's no superheroes in here. There's no lore that has to be changed up. He's building his own world. That's cool to me.
Dawn of the Dead is based on the George Romero Dawn of the Dead from the 70s.
Right, but this still felt like kind of his own, his whole thing, and it was cool.
He does his own thing. It's not as good as the original.
Right. No,
I don't know if you've seen the original.
No, I love the original, but I just think as a new take, as something that's not adapted from like something that we hadn't seen in a while.
Zack really is just like zombies in a mall.
Yeah.
And that was actually written by James Gunn.
Yeah.
Did you know that?
I didn't know that he wrote that. That's awesome.
James Gunn and Zack Snyder. People pit them against each other so much because all the DC stuff, and they're kind of the two superhero auteurs. I don't think Zack Snyder's great. I would say he's an auteur, though.
Yeah, I hope that.
And him and James Gunn are kind of our two superhero auteurs. They're not the yes men to the studio like Joss Whedon or the Russo brothers. Not saying Joss Whedon and the Russo brothers did bad.
Right.
Which I don't love Joss Whedon. Anyways, no more asides.
But
my point is, these two have the visions in the superhero franchises, for better or for worse.
Which I think...
and people pit them against each other so much. But Zack and James Gunn worked together in 2004.
And you know what's so funny about that? Imagine if they actually had... Imagine if, they say it's not going to happen because it hasn't happened on a previous project. But imagine somewhere in the new DC universe... that James Gunn calls Zack Snyder and is like, come write this with me. And imagine how, if we're still in a world where the Snyder fans are still like, we've had the DCEU happen, and it's making more money than any of the Snyder stuff, and they're still in denial, and Zack goes on and writes for them, then they just start to boycott new Zack Snyder. Oh, he's to sell.
Here's what I have to say for Snyder fans.
Yeah.
I think he's disappointed with how the DC stuff went, but I think he's happy moving on.
I agree.
I don't think he has a problem with Rebel Moon, and I'm happy for him. I wish him the best, even though Zack isn't my thing. If you're a Snyder fan, what you should be doing is supporting Zack Snyder and not...
I agree.
And not saying, oh, but we could have had him doing Batman. Support Rebel Moon, man.
Yeah,
I don't know if I'll like Rebel Moon or hate Rebel Moon. I probably won't like it because I'm not a big Zack Snyder fan. But if you're a Zack Snyder fan, stop saying, restore the Snyderverse. Because the Snyderverse, he's done with that. Unfortunately, that came and went.
Yep.
For better or for worse. And he's on to this Rebel Moon shit. And you should be supporting that.
You really should, because honestly, the thing that makes me so super upset about this is, like, I'm not a Zack Snyder fan, and the thing that's really hard for me is Rebel Moon. It has a great cast, but I know that Zack Snyder is capable of burning me, and I'm expecting, and even though we're not in the MCU, I take that MJ logic from No Way Home. If I'm expecting disappointment, I won't be disappointed, and I still would probably be disappointed because Zack Snyder. Because here's the thing that worries me. See, the Snyder fans almost support his version of DC because they think that he knew. Since they like Zack Snyder, they're supporting Zack Snyder's version of DC because they don't know. They haven't read a comic. They don't know what DC's like. So they're looking at just Zack Snyder. Oh, this is a new take and nothing I've never even thought of, and just so they get excited about that because it's new and they think it's different. But the problem is they don't know the real source material, so they don't know what it means to be different. Because there's being different and being completely bad, and there's being different and being good. So it just depends. Right. So, like, with this, my biggest fear is, I swear to God, if this movie is, and I'm not saying that I'll like this movie, but if this movie has like 90% of Rotten Tomatoes and is loved by critics, and if they start talking about, if these Snyder fans start being like, oh, Zack Snyder did such a good job with Rebel Moon, let's bring him over to Star Wars. No, you stay the hell. We're having enough problems already.
Well, I
you
think
stay
if
the
Rebel
hell
Moon
away.
is successful and has good critical score, Zack Snyder's got his own Star Wars. He's got his own playground.
Well, then you better stay in that playground with those characters.
Agree.
You better not, because I know these people, and I know that they're toxic, and they're gonna come up and they'll be like, "Oh, they should do Star Wars movie for Zack Snyder now." I'm like, no, don't. He should stay in his sci-fi sandbox.
We'll get back to Rebel Moon more later.
Yeah, agreed.
But love it or hate it. Here's my final word for now until we get back to it in a little bit when we're done going through his career. But love it or hate it, I'm excited for Rebel Moon, and I think it's different.
I agree.
It's a different idea. Like, Army of the Dead even felt like, well, I'm going to make my own IP. However, it's going to be zombies, you know? So I kind of have this pre-established zombie lore. I'm not going to break new ground that much.
Yeah.
This even kind of has the crutch of, like, similar to Star Wars, but he can try to change it. He can do his own sci-fi thing, and I'm interested.
I'm interested.
But I think we've talked a bit about Watchmen. We talked a bit about Dawn of the Dead. Why don't we talk about the last film from Zack Snyder's pre-DCEU days? Let's talk about 300 a little bit. Okay. What are your thoughts on 300?
I think 300 is, because we know he did the first one. I'm not so sure about the second one. But so, with the first movie, I think it's a good premise. Like, it's definitely a Frank Miller adaptation. And it feels faithful for what Frank Miller made. But I'm not like... I like Gladiators and I like the thing, but I wouldn't tell you that I read Frank Miller's Gladiator work. I'm more of a Frank Miller Dark Knight Returns guy. Which makes me mad because that's another problem with Zack Snyder that we'll get into later. But that makes me mad because then people always harp on that they think that his Frank Miller stuff that he did in the DCU was good. But the problem is... it's not as good as, like, the actual Frank Miller stuff. So, like, with 300, as its actual adaptation, I think for an adaptation, it's better than a lot of his other adaptations, but that still doesn't say much because it's a story that I don't necessarily care too much about. So it's like, and the other thing is, because this wasn't early before his Snyder stuff, it showed the weaknesses more than the strengths. Like, you can tell by the battle sequences, they do have the R ratings, so you have the blood. It's a lot of that nonsense slow-mo stuff that you don't need. And it's like, oh, you know what would be cool? A slow motion shot. Every time. Right. It's like the Michael Bay problem. You know what's cool? Explosions. For no reason. And you can see that because when you get to his DC career, Man of Steel, Justice League, BVS, they all have that. They all have that slow-mo, like, pop. It's like his Abrams lens flare thing. It's his trick. But it doesn't work for me, because it's like, it's all the time. So the magic of it is gone. If you did it like, oh, that's a really cool use of that shot, it'd be fine. But it's every time. So I think with 300, it was good for the non-Snyder DC movie era, but it's still, for Zack Snyder's early roots, it doesn't show his strengths as much as it reveals his weaknesses. That's my take on 300. What's your take on 300?
My take on 300, see, I actually only saw this movie recently.
Right.
I have an HD DVD player, which is the format that kind of went against Blu-ray and died out. And I have the movie. I don't have much of a thought on it. I think it has a lot of the issues of Zack's early work, where it's really muddy and it's not super pretty. There's also a lot of CG, which kind of hampers the film, in my opinion. I'm a big fan of, like, Kirk Douglas's Spartacus by Stanley Kubrick. And it's like, there's better Gladiator films out there. And I don't think that's fully down to Zack Snyder, but also kind of the source material. Like, you know, I mean, I'm sorry, but you look at something like Stanley Kubrick's epic Spartacus versus the 2-hour 2009 muddy film based on a Frank Miller comic book. It doesn't compare. It's okay. It really is. It's okay. But it never interested me. It didn't capture me. I love historical, like, gladiator epics. But why would I watch 300 when fucking Spartacus is there, or Gladiator, or fucking any other number of similar movies? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I hear you 100%. I think that definitely is, like, a part of the issue is just, like, there's other things that came before it that are even better. And so, like, even though you're bringing in newer graphics, newer things, it doesn't have that, like, that feeling of anything, like, for his new ad. It's like everything he does, he's copied. Zack Snyder, people say that because he does different camera angles and different things that what he's doing is new ground. But I don't believe there's anything until maybe doing, like, obviously his new IPs aren't new ground, but there's at least some originality in them because they're not bought off by big things. Like, Dawn of the Dead is a big franchise, but he's doing something different with it, but not 100% new ground. Rebel Moon, as we talked about, is something new. It's like Star Wars, but it's still something new. And, like, with this, when he did the DC movies, when he did 300, he's just kind of copy and paste. Copy and paste.
Right.
Just, and that's kind of how I feel about Zack Snyder. He's like someone who sat in the back row of his teachers and his mentors and went, "Oh, I want to do this. The teacher says, let's do this."
I love Akira Kurosawa. I love Christopher Nolan.
Yeah.
Etc. So, what are your thoughts on the first third of Zack's career? What I call Zack's adaptation era, where he kind of just adapts movies or adapts comics and redoes them. What's your overall thoughts?
I thought it was a good start, but that's not saying much. Like, I feel like it was a good start for him to, like, oh yeah, look, I'm a director and I made some things. That's it. I feel like this is very short. His beginning era, I have less to say about his less good era. So I feel like it just is like, this era is like, I'm getting started. I'm trying to put my name to some maps.
Right. I think this is his strongest era. I mean, I won't talk much on his current era, which is the Zack Snyder original IP era, because there isn't much to it. Where his DC movies are very much written and directed by Zack, this is his era where he kind of has the training wheels on.
Yep.
So I guess to transition, let's take the training wheels off and let's talk a bit about Zack in his loose adaptation era. The era where he's doing Man of Steel, BVS, and Justice League Justice League Snyder Cut. So, Joe, I think we should break down each of these films individually.
Okay.
What are your general thoughts on Man of Steel?
So, this is where things are going to get dicey, okay? I think Man of Steel is not the worst Superman movies, but it's not one of the best ones either. Because there's a lot of issues, in my opinion. And there are some good things. Like, I do love that both of Superman's dads in this movie have both played Robin Hood. That's kind of a little fun fact. If you guys didn't know that, I think it's kind of cool that you have both Russell Crowe and the other guy both played Robin Hood, which I think is pretty cool. But I think Henry Cavill was right for this character, and I think that if he worked with better people and had better scripts, he could have had a great future as Superman.
I don't disagree.
And I feel like, but this movie is wrong for him because all the wrong people are working on this movie. So, for one thing, if Superman has the powers that he has, and these are Zod's minions, and you look at, like, I feel like Zack Snyder, and I don't know if he did this in his other movies, for someone who wants to make superhero movies, his fight scenes in a superhero movie where Zack Snyder, where his center of his universe is Superman, Superman's fights are too long in this movie.
Right.
They're too long. And a Superman fight scene shouldn't be boring because it should be, you should marvel at, oh, look at the heat vision, look at the cool super punches and the cool...
Superman's got an incredible power set.
Yep.
And his fight scenes should be pretty intense.
And he made them look boring. Like, you're seeing the first lieutenant, and then the argument they make is, well, he's still discovering his powers. I don't care if he's discovering his powers. He's been on Earth longer than any of these guys. He should be able to maintain taking off lackeys. And then when he fights Zod, it's fine. The fight with him and Zod is fine, except for that somehow the whole people always get into the whole collateral damage. My problem is, even as big as a threat as Zod is, I just cannot believe that there is any version of Superman that is this early in his career that would just go, how am I going to save the planet? I'm going to snap Zod's neck because it's the right thing to do. It just doesn't sit with me. I don't agree with that being the end result. So to me, Man of Steel is where Zack, in my opinion, that's where Zack Snyder's career, it goes up a little bit because he's stepping into a different area, stepping into superhero stuff, but it also goes down because he's not making a great Superman movie starting off this universe.
It's an okay Superman movie, in my opinion.
Right.
But my issue, I do have an issue with Superman snapping Zod's neck because he's in anguish about it, right?
Yep.
But then he kind of just gets over it.
Yep, it's a problem.
Like, what he should have done is, the real Superman, in the comics and shit, would have punched Zod, put him back in the Phantom Zone, and said, look, fuck you for what you've done, but, I have to protect this world.
Yeah.
But I'm not gonna kill you. I'm not gonna stoop as low as you would.
Yeah,
Zod.
and he has time to do those things, but he chooses to do the villain and cowardice way to do those things. And the problem that this is as good as the film is, and we'll get to this next film next. It just shows in the next movie how. So in Civil War, people debated on who are you more, Team Cap or Team Iron Man. If you look at the second movie, I'm far more Team Batman than I am Team Superman because what Superman did is ridiculous. He ran through the city, caused so much collateral damage that Superman, even in his early years, should never allow.
Right.
Like, and then he murders Zod. And this entire battle was all to just kill Zod and end the threat. That's not what Superman does.
Right.
So it just is,
no, I think it's ridiculous. I think as a film, it's better than the other two.
Yep.
But it still lacks in a lot of elements. And Zack fundamentally misunderstanding every DC character he touches is a common theme.
Yep, he does.
And it starts here.
I agree. I mean, the chemistry between Amy Adams and Henry Cavill also isn't there from this first movie either. Like, you don't feel that even at this first movie, that connection isn't very strong.
I think Amy Adams is great. I don't love her as Lois.
I agree. I think she's a great actress. I think for this role, I don't think she's a great Lois. I agree with that standpoint.
I understand what they were going for with Lois. I understand why they casted her, especially post Arrival.
Yep.
That Denis Novelle movie.
Yep.
But she really failed to launch for me, and it mostly comes down to script. You can say, I want Amy Adams from Arrival to be Lois Lane.
Yeah.
But you have to write Lois Lane as this proactive character.
Agreed.
And I think they failed to do that.
I agree.
I also think Henry Cavill, he looks like Superman, that's for sure.
Yep.
he feels like Superman. I look at him and I say, this is a great casting for Superman. My issue is how it was written,
Agreed.
what Superman stands for. I don't think Zack ever defined morally where he wanted Superman to be, and if he did, he incorrectly put Superman in the wrong place.
I saw this great
Superman in the wrong place.
I saw this great YouTube short the other day, and I'm glad this comes up, where it showed, even though we haven't seen James Gunn Superman Legacy yet, there was a big video about how it was Zack Snyder's version of Superman. Zack Snyder viewed Superman as a power and as a Kryptonian, where James Gunn is already showing from what he knows about Superman that he views Superman as a hopeful hero, savior of the planet. And the fact that Zack Snyder did even a Justice League, even a universe of these movies, and he was focused solely on Superman being an alien as that big driving thing is horrible. Like, because that's not what we want with Superman. Like, why do we want to see... Do we want to see that with Superman? Why would we care about that?
Well, Superman, while he's an alien, he kind of represents the immigrant side. Like, Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster really used him as a power fantasy originally. And he represents, like, an immigrant coming to America. He's as an American as you and I.
Yep.
But he has this unshakable moral compass.
Yes.
And I think him killing Zod is a big thing. So while I think the movie is fine, I think him killing Zod is a fundamental misunderstanding. And I think it set the universe off in a wrong direction. Especially considering, and I think this can transition into Batman v Superman, you have a very jaded Batman.
Yep.
And I don't know if I want to see a very jaded Batman go up against a very jaded Superman. If anything, if Batman's going to be jaded, make Superman this moral anchor. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
Make Superman be like, yo, Batman, you've gone too far.
Yeah,
That's what we should see.
Yeah,
if you're going to make this post like Jason Todd, Death in the Family, Batman, who's off the rails, we need to see Superman. But I guess I've transitioned. Joe, what are your thoughts on BVS?
Oh, gosh. This is going to be... So, you guys thought I had bad things to say about Man of Steel? Dude, Batman vs. Superman is not just one of the worst Zack Snyder's movies I've seen. It's one of the worst movies I've seen, period. Because this movie has... and it doesn't matter if you watch the Ultimate Cut or you watch the longer cut or the theatrical cut. I've seen both the theatrical cut and the longer cut. And people say, oh, the longer version makes the story make more sense. There are fundamental problems with this movie. Number one, you have both Batman and Superman. Jaded doesn't work. Wonder Woman shoot in here just because they're trying to race themselves into Justice League. Then they're set up for Cyborg, Aquaman, and Flash out of nowhere. Just because. And then I get we have to have Lex Luthor in this movie, but dude, Jesse Eisenberg is fundamentally wrong for Lex Luthor in this movie, in this set of movies, because sometimes he's acting like the Joker, sometimes he's acting like the Riddler, but he's supposed to be Lex Luthor. It's so off the wall. Like, maybe he should have just played Mad Hatter, and they showed Mad Hatter in Gotham, because he kind of gives off that kind of Mad Hatter-y vibe, but sometimes he's Joker. But he's supposed to be Lex Luthor, but he never feels like he's Lex Luthor. The most Lex Luthor thing he ever does in the movie is when he calls Doomsday and uses the blood of Zod to make Doomsday. And that's the other problem. They've denied there's actually Doomsday. They said whatever they want to say. They give us Doomsday in this movie, and this is the most pitiful Doomsday we have ever seen. Like, we're coming off now. I've watched this movie now after seeing Superman and Lois's max budget Doomsday on a TV show that's on the CW. And that Doomsday looks, feels, and acts better than this Doomsday. This Doomsday is a Michael Bay Ninja Turtle meets a cave troll from Lord of the Rings in the worst way possible.
Well, the thing is, you look at it, I use the word fundamental misunderstanding.
Right.
a lot in this podcast. But it's a fundamental misunderstanding of Doomsday.
Yep.
It's, let's make this BS origin story, and we'll use Doomsday because he's a heavy. They use him as a heavy. He's a heavy. He doesn't have any personality, and he doesn't have any reason of being. It's bullshit.
Yep. I agree. And then the other big problem is the jadedness of our Batman. The biggest issue we run into is, how is this Batman, like, how is he able to go...
1 second.
Oh, yeah, no worries.
Hey, Mom.
Hi, how are you?
You're on the Joe and Connor Power Hour right now.
Oh, hi everybody.
I'll...
I wanted to call in and be part of the Power Hour, so that's why I'm calling now. What are we discussing?
We're discussing Zack Snyder's career. It's a bit of a retrospective episode.
Oh wow, what a roller coaster.
Yeah, it is. It's quite the
Did I
roller
get that
coaster.
right?
We're talking about the 3 eras of Zack Snyder right now. What do you think of Zack Snyder?
I think that, he's got a mishmash of character profiles that he puts together, and occasionally it can be confusing. He doesn't put out a consistent product like a McDonald's hamburger.
I agree. Anyways, Mom, I'll call you back.
Did I get that right?
Yep, I'll call you back. We got 14 minutes left. We got 14 minutes left of the Power Hour, and then I will call you back.
That sounds great.
This is not going to get edited out because I'm too lazy, so you're on the podcast.
Sweet. I've never been on a podcast. It's my first. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Right. So that is a fun part. So
That was my mom,
yes.
everybody.
So the whole thing, yeah. So yeah, we got a nice little outsider perspective guest star into
my
the
mother,
podcast.
who might have never seen a Zack Snyder movie in her life.
Still
That
gave
was
a
her
pretty good-
opinion.
Still gave a pretty good
Not
representation.
inaccurate.
Yeah.
Not an inaccurate position on Zack Snyder.
No, definitely not.
I don't know if she's ever seen a Zack Snyder movie. She might have
Yeah.
seen 300 back in the day with
Right.
me.
That's funny.
Maybe Watchmen.
Yep. So yeah, so we're back to BVS. So with Batman, so we have a jaded Batman, a Batman that kills, that is never really properly defined outside of a foreshadowing crowbar and a Robin suit.
Right.
That's his motivation for him killing. Which, if we had more context, maybe I could get into the concept, but there's not enough there that really sells me on this. And like, it's Batman.
Also, all we see is the suit and the crowbar. We don't
Yep.
see him grapple with the death of whatever Robin it is. There's no
Yeah.
point where he's looking at a picture and saying Jason got killed or Dick or whoever. I know they were thinking about Dick Grayson.
They said
Whoever
Grayson, yeah.
whoever it was, doesn't matter. He never says, I'm pissed that Robin died
Yep.
or it's my fault. He doesn't have a conversation with Alfred.
Yep.
And what we needed was that conversation with Alfred, where Alfred's like, Master Bruce, you need to chill the fuck out.
Yep.
You're
I think you
tripping
did,
right now.
I mean, you definitely needed that, or if they wanted to take it a step further, since this is a 3-hour movie, I think they had Jared Leto casted at the time because they were getting ready for
Right.
Suicide Squad.
Suicide Squad came out, because BVS came out about 6 months
Yeah.
before Suicide Squad, I believe.
Yeah, so why didn't they just, like, literally just make this the introduction to Jared Leto's Joker and just have him kill Robin? We see it, and then you see how it weighs on him, and then you have the conversation, and it's like, yeah, chill the fuck out, Master Bruce. What are you doing? Like,
Right.
I think that would be good, because having both jaded characters and then 2 jaded characters come together like they're heroes makes no sense.
Right.
Like, there's police in this city. Nobody cares that, like... well,
Is Jesse Eisenberg's Lex Luthor the most misguided character decision Zack Snyder could ever have possibly made?
I think that's a pretty good take. I
understand what he was going for. He wanted
Yeah.
a Mark Zuckerberg. He wanted an Elon Musk. He wanted some jaded billionaire who is just so power hungry he can't stand the idea of Superman. I understand what he was going for. It was still stupid.
It was stupid. It just comes off too jokery. It has a Mad Hatter flair to it. It's like you never know which villain he's...
it's a mix of a million things.
Yep, it just
and it
doesn't work.
succeeds at none of them.
And then the next one, which isn't even that big of a part of a movie of this that I really hate, is, and it folds into Lex Luthor's plan, is how could they make Jimmy Olsen a, like, spy for, like, a mercenary that, like, instead of a camera, he has an assault rifle and is, like, murdering people? Like, what? Well, like, I'm all for character changes, but that's too far. This is Jimmy Olsen. Superman's best friend is just a murderer.
You're gonna kill
now?
Jimmy Olsen 10 minutes after his introduction. And the reason they even bothered to bring in Jimmy Olsen is because Jamie Olsen from Man of Steel didn't work out, if you remember.
Yeah, that's right.
My God. Come on.
This is so bad.
You know, the movies were casted well, though. I do like Lawrence Fishburne as Perry White.
Yep,
I don't
like him
mind.
too.
I know the race swap is a controversial topic, but Lawrence Fishburne has an attitude that works for Perry White. Kind of a grumpy, especially recently with like his roles in John Wick and kind of as Morbius. It works.
Yeah, he actually
love the casting in Man of Steel. I love Ben Affleck as Batman in theory.
Yep, I agree.
I mean, The Flash, the 10 minutes we see Batfleck in Flash,
one of the best 10 minutes we've ever seen with him, yeah.
The issue is execution.
Yep.
There are some casting mishaps, like Ezra Miller as Barry Allen, also known as Sheldon Cooper. But
that's a good comparison.
They were like, I don't think he'd ever read a Flash comic. I don't think Gal Gadot is a bad Wonder Woman. I don't think Jason Momoa is a bad Aquaman. For the version of Aquaman they're going for, they're going for more of that 90s version of Aquaman. I'm fine with it.
Yeah.
But I thought Ezra Miller was a miscast.
I agree. He was definitely a miscast.
I think he worked in the Flash movie. I felt like they actually decided, well, if we're going to make a Flash movie, we should probably read a Flash comic.
Yep.
And that's why I think the Flash movie works personality-wise with Barry a lot more.
Yeah, I think so too.
But I still don't know if the angle they took the DCEU's Flash works for me, and I hope the DCU's Flash improves upon what we
I hope we just have a different DCU Flash. I know there's been rumors that like
I'd be fine if everyone in the DCU gets replaced. I love Margot Robbie as Harley Quinn. I love John Cena as Peacemaker.
Yeah.
But a lot of those are like small characters that I like.
And I think
there are other people out there that can take those roles.
And I mean, it's possible. But I think that James Gunn might just want to keep those two just because they are, like, kind of his babies. Like,
intentional,
people.
Right?
Yeah. And so, to me, there's reason that those characters stay where others are completely gone. Like, to me, if they want to recast Aquaman and we just get Momoa as Lobo, I'm cool with that. I think he's going to crush it as Lobo. I think he could do great. So, yeah, I think recasting is the way to go. I mean, I think that's the sad thing is, like, they have really good actors in these movies, but the execution of everything, the scripts, that's where these movies fall apart. And that's where the problem is. Like, with BBS, like, BBS is... It's fair to say that as bad as I think, as I do have problems with Man of Steel, I think Man of Steel and Justice League are just... it's not saying much, but everything in this of the Snyder DC movie Zack Snyder era, I'd say BBS is the worst of
sure.
Like, I think that is the main consensus with this movie is that it is just the worst.
Should we move on to Justice League?
Yeah, let's do it.
Snyder's Justice League HBO original.
Let's do it.
I guess I gotta ask, and be brief with this.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on Justice League?
Okay, Justice League. I absolutely hate Justice League. Except for there is one scene in Justice League I love with the it's a comedic scene with the lasso when the lasso's around Aquaman and he tells Barry witnesses the scene and then Barry talks to him later and then he goes and he says something about if you tell anyone about this when you see him hitting on Wonder Woman, he's like, you'll meet every piranha I know. And that was the best use of joke in that movie, in a movie that was filled with awful.
Terrible jokes.
Yeah, terrible jokes. PS2 video game graphic, like, horribleness. So, yeah, I would say Justice League I wasn't a huge fan of. And I just don't feel like, for a Justice League movie, it doesn't have anything that makes it feel like a Justice League movie. It just feels like PS2 graphics horribleness, jumbled alien fights. It feels like Whedon wanted to try and remake his Avengers movie, the first one, but like with DC characters.
With scraps, too.
Yes, exactly. With scraps is the best word. It literally feels like he copied and pasted what he did. He wanted to bring the MCU to the DC EU, and it didn't work.
It was misinformed.
He tried to turn Batman into Iron Man in like so many times. It's like, why?
All right, so I guess I don't think my thoughts are that different, so I don't think I'm going to share them.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not going to elaborate too much. Let's talk about Joss Whedon's, or Zack Snyder's Snyder Cut. What are your thoughts? Or, like, what were your initial reactions when Zack pulled it off? Because people were fighting for this movie since, like, 2018. And then finally in 2021, March 2021, I believe, it came to be. What were your thoughts?
I will say I was impressed. I was impressed that this movie actually existed, for one. And two, I was impressed that it was not a train wreck. I thought it was going to be an absolute train wreck because of all the problems that was with the previous movie. I was like, Zack Snyder's version of this movie can't be much better. And while I'll say, well, there's certain aspects that are better. Now, I've heard this saying over and over again, and I agree with this statement 100%. Longer does not equal better. It was true with Batman v Superman. It is true here. Because the Snyder Cut comes out at, what, 4 hours and something?
Right.
A 4 hour and something.
Almost 4 hours or 4 hours.
Yeah, almost like whatever, 4 hours and stuff. Well, there are things that are... This movie is basically trying to be a better version of Justice League. But here's the problem. Justice League wasn't good. This movie is better than Justice League, but it's not the same story idea of Justice League. It's still in the DNA of this movie. So, you can say you change the actors, you can say you change the effects. They're the same movie. There's a few minor differences, but they are the same. They have the same story. They're the same movie. And so, the only difference between the two is that this one has Darkseid. And so for me, I was excited to see that Darkseid was in this for the time that we saw him. That was my big motivation that I wanted to see. I was excited that we're going to finally see Magneto as Deathstroke, even though we didn't see him very long. I was excited about that super secret scene with Jared Leto's Joker, where his Joker's actually good. But we only got one scene of that. So there's a lot of things here that are interesting concepts and an interesting end, if you want to call this a trilogy. And then the Martian Manhunter reveal was interesting, even though he only did that because he couldn't get Jon Stewart Green Lantern. It's probably a good thing that DC didn't give him the rights to Green Lantern. After how many of these other characters he's fucked over, it's a good thing they did not give him access to Lantern. So this movie is like kind of like mixed up mashup of a bunch of ideas, just like his universe, and it's full of promises, but we'll never know if he would have ever delivered on those promises, or if we would be happy with what those promises are. So I feel like it's just a jumble of the second best movie in this Snyderverse of DC movies, but that's not saying much.
Right. It's very long too.
It's too long. There's things that they should have cut out internally, like the song with the Aquaman village, like where the villagers are singing. Why? We don't need that.
It's an hour longer than those Lord of the Rings movies.
And that's a problem, considering those movies have the right to be the long.
It's the same length as Seven Samurai.
Yep. And there are certain movies like, I like a long movie, but make it long for purpose.
Superhero movies are supposed to be these big floaty action epics. Why would he make it 4:3 or 1:1.1 aspect ratio? And why does he believe Justice League should be in black and white?
Yeah, that's a problem.
The idea of comics are that they are colorful, fun, etc. There can be moody comics, there can be smart comics, but especially the Justice League is a colorful bunch of heroes doing colorful shit in full color, in 16:9 aspect ratio. Why the fuck did he think that was a good idea?
Yep. Because I truly believe...
And there's nothing of the content of this movie that justifies it.
Nothing.
Zack Snyder is pretentious.
He is pretentious.
This is Zack Snyder at his peak pretension.
Yep. He is definitely pretentious. And it's sad because as a comic movie, the fact that this is the first Justice movie labeled as my favorite DC superhero team. No, not even that. My favorite superhero team, period.
I love Justice League.
Yeah. And I do not accept this as a Justice League movie. To me, this as a Justice League movie is absolutely sad because nothing about this, there's no iconic, the music choices are weird. There's no actual, like, they did, it's interesting you mentioned the Watchmen thing because they had that whole Hallelujah thing in this movie, which is so weird to have in here because it's like, it's a good song, but why are you even a hopeful song when there's no real hope in this movie because nothing's vibrant when Superman comes back? And he's obsessed with, I'm all for Superman with a black suit, but he's obsessed for this moody darkness era of these universe. And like, it's so interesting because you have, once again, great actors, poor use of these actors. And they just sign on because they believe in whatever vision they believe to be in this movie, and they're okay with it. Cyborg gets a lot more screen time in this movie, but because of all the issues with Ray Fisher, we'll never see this version of Cyborg ever again. So it's like, I guess it's good for what we get, but it's also what the point. I still can't believe that this is loved. The one scene of Ezra Miller's Flash where he supposedly goes into the Speed Force, I do not understand why people are so obsessed with that scene. It's nothing that special. It's like, and the whole Blue Lightning thing is so stupid. I just don't, the whole thing is like, well, he's a less experienced Barry, so he's gonna have Yellow Lightning and then get the Gold Lightning when he's experienced. That's not how it works. Barry's lightning is always gold. Right. It doesn't matter how experienced he is, how not experienced he is. It's come on, just so many issues with this. Just so many issues, and just, it's sad to me that this is our second best movie, but it's also so bad at the same time. Like, this is by far the worst era of Zack Snyder's career, and the fact that people praise it and say that the Snyderverse, reunite the Snyderverse, make the Snyderverse happen again. No, it's never going to happen again, and Zack Snyder does need to move on, and I'm glad he has moved on.
I guess let's move. We've passed the hour mark.
Yeah.
For the Joe Connors Power Hour, so let's move on to the third era of Zack Snyder, the current one. Let's talk about Zack Snyder's current trajectory and kind of the future. Army of Death, Army of the Dead, whatever his I didn't watch it even, to be real with you.
Right.
But I am excited for Rebel Moon.
Yeah.
I'm intrigued. Army of the Dead, it's another zombie movie. It's kind of living off that franchise. Whatever. I don't have much thoughts on it. I heard it was not that good.
Yeah.
But what are your thoughts on the upcoming Rebel Moon?
I am intrigued to see Rebel Moon off the idea that Zack Snyder...
Because we're both huge Star Wars fans.
Yeah, I'm always down for sci-fi. Like, I hope that this movie... I hope from the premise and the idea of it looks great. The only thing that gets me very nervous is that it's Zack Snyder, and I haven't been happy with Zack Snyder lately in a long time. Right. So, like, anything that he's attached to now, while I did enjoy Army of the Dead, I have... It was okay. It's nothing mind-blowing. Zack Snyder's not even in my top 10 favorite directors of all time. Not even top 100. Like, so, to me hearing about Rebel Moon, will I watch it? Yeah. Do I think it's going to be good? I hope so.
I hope so as well.
Exactly. And
here's the thing. I also think it's kind of to his benefit. Because this is, like we said, we split Zack Snyder's career into three things.
Yep.
Zack Snyder adapting, Zack Snyder kind of let off the leash and doing adaptions, yes, but doing what he wants with these adaptions and kind of figuring it out himself. Now we're looking at Zack with original IPs, which I find very intriguing.
Yep.
Because he can now do Star Wars and Seven Samurai, which are his inspirations, but he can do what he wishes because it's also his IP.
Yep.
So we're in an interesting era. Do you think Zack Snyder is going to be in a better field not adapting characters since he kind of create his own characters and create his own mood? Do you think that's going to improve over him trying to do these radical changes to Batman or doing this radical changes to Superman?
I think it will improve him if he makes good characters and that his story is good. Like, it depends if his story like if he makes just a sci-fi epic and he's got some solid character writing for brand new characters that he's got his own new spin on, like, because they're brand new and he makes new things of them. I think for this being original, I think this could be really good because it's new characters. We get to know what are these new characters. Maybe that will be a cool part of the process.
I do think he's not the best director, not the best writer.
Yeah.
I'm really hoping Rebel Moon shows improvement.
Yeah.
And I hope it becomes a franchise, and I hope it becomes a trilogy or something. And what I want to see from Zack is growth.
Yeah, I agree.
You know, because Zack has always had a level of potential, and it's always been hampered by pretension.
Yeah.
I think. Or it's been hampered by, well, I'm creating an IP. There's almost only so much I can do. I think Zack should do crazy things in his own world. I think it's best that he's in his own world. Because I look at someone like Rian Johnson and what he did to Star Wars, and Rian Johnson fucked up Star Wars.
Mm-hmm.
But here's the thing. I like Looper. I like Glass Onion. I like everything I've seen from Rian Johnson, except it hurts me to watch The Last Jedi.
Yeah.
Do you think in a way, with Zack Snyder off the leash of IP, do you think he could be like a Rian Johnson? Or do you foresee him just being the hack that some people assume? Do you think he could truly show that he's this genius that some people hold him up to be? Or do you think he might just be a big hack? And
I mean, I hope, on an optimistic side, I hope that he shows that he truly has this talent. Otherwise, he is just going to be exposed as a hack. And if he is a hack, then it proves what we all have already known about him. And hopefully, if he is proven to be a hack, hopefully people will finally start shutting up about him. And hopefully this will be the nail in the coffin and people will realize...
I do think now that he's in his own IPs...
Yeah.
It's going to prove either way. I think this is the proof. He doesn't have source material to lean on like the first third of his career. He doesn't have an IP that he tries something radically new with like the second part of his career. This is chapter 3, and we're looking at a Zack Snyder that could go either way. He can go in a positive direction, and he could prove he was a genius the whole time. Or he could prove he's a fucking dumbass, like we're saying. And I really hope I'm eating my words, because I like good movies. I'd love to have some good Zack Snyder movies. I'd love for him to prove, yep, I'm a fucking genius. You were a fucking asshole for talking shit, Connor Joe.
That would be great. I mean, I would love to see that too. But he won't do that.
Let's see. We'll see. Yeah.
I'll see.
And I think Rebel Moon is definitely... I'm going to drunk view it for sure, but I think it should show up on this podcast. When Rebel Moon comes out, I think it's something I want to talk to you about.
Yeah, sure. we should definitely... When Rebel Moon... I think that's a Netflix release, right?
It is.
Yeah.
I don't have Netflix, so I might be over at your house to watch
I do have Netflix. I don't have to figure out how to... Yeah, I've been trying to figure out with that stuff because the whole thing, like, I had to connect to my parents' Netflix, but I think I might just eventually, when I get a new job, start paying for Netflix and just get it streamlined through. There's a lot of things I want to watch.
I'll find a way. I know my mom my mom does. Bryn has Netflix, and Bryn said I could use her Netflix.
Well, that's cool.
Well, then Bryn would let me.
If she does, if you could ask her. Man, I don't talk to her, so I mean, if you think she would,
I talk to Bryn still. I give her the tips. Okay. Anyways,
so that works. Yeah, I mean, we'll figure it out because we will watch it because I do want to genuinely check it out for sure.
Or we'll pirate it to a DVD and we'll watch it.
Yeah, I'm sure that'll be easy too.
Whatever works. We'll figure something out.
Yeah, we'll find a way to watch it no matter
what.
So,
Joe.
Yeah.
Final thoughts on Zack Snyder before we wrap up the podcast until next week.
All right. Final thoughts on Zack Snyder. I think he's a director with potential, but he hasn't proven himself to me in any of the projects that he has done thus far. So I gotta say, I'm not even close to being what they would consider a Snyder fan. I don't hate Zack Snyder. I don't think he's the worst person on the earth as a director or anything. He has potential, but he has really bad ideas that hold him back from striving to be the greatness that I think he could be.
I agree. I 100% agree with what you're saying. I think Zack Snyder, I really hope Rebel Moon turns out for him. But I also hope it's low-key, hope it's Trainwreck, because I love shitting on the man as well.
Yeah. It's like either way we'll be happy.
Either way, I'm happy. Either way, I win. One
Yeah.
way I win, I see a good movie, and one way I win, I see a shit movie, and I get an excuse to shit on Zack Snyder.
It's like we're literally
It's
Thanos
excellent.
with the Infinity Gauntlet. Reality can be anything we want it to be.
Yep, exactly. All right, well, this was Connor of NTMA Productions and
Yoda Joe 93.
Yoda Joe 93. We will see you next week, where we don't have a solid plan. We think we're going to talk a bit about the New Frontier movie, because I gave Joe my spare copy of New Frontier, and I'm interested to see his thoughts. So
Oh yeah, definitely.
we'll talk about that, and we'll talk about something else next week.
That's great.